Hello everybody! JGC Anime here, and today we're gonna be reviewing The Dreaming Boys of Realist, or Yumemiru Danshi wa Genjitsu Shashi Gisha. I completely said that wrong, but we're just gonna roll with it. So, what is the premise of this anime? Basically, it's all about this guy Sajo, who is completely head over heels in love with this girl called Natsuka, or Natsukawa, my bad. And during that whole thing, he finally realizes, after all her rejection, after all the times he's confessed to her and admitted that he likes her, she finally keeps telling him, no, I don't want to date you, stop it, leave me alone. And he finally gets it. He finally realizes, oh, she doesn't want me to be around her anymore. So he decides to just do that. Leave her alone, leave her be. And from then on, he's meant to try to move on with his life and do his own thing while she does her own thing, although there seems to be something going on with her where she actually might just have feelings for him. And yeah, I'm just gonna hop into some spoiler-free thoughts here because that was all I could really go for the story summary. And I'm just gonna be honest here, this show really sucks. Like, I don't think I would have been able to sit through this anime if I didn't watch new episodes every single week instead of all at once. If I watched them all at once, I probably wouldn't be making this review right now because the show is so flippin' bad. There are so many issues that I have with it, where most of them revolve around spoilers, so I'm gonna do that mostly in the spoiler section. I'm gonna explain things there, but I am gonna talk about a few things here about why I really hate this anime. And first things first, I'm just gonna say this here. The animation, oh my goodness. I have seen a lot of shows with a lot of weird and kind of awkward animation, and most of the time, while I admit, yeah, the animation isn't great, I can still get invested. But I did not think that anime could look more like a PowerPoint presentation, thinking what an anime would look like. The animation in this is so freaking bad. Like, the characters will just literally stand still, barely move, and then you have like all these stiff movements that look so awkward and out of place that they just don't look right. They just look so strange. They look more like a fan animation than an actual official anime. And it just baffles me how they saw this and thought, yeah, that's fine. That animation works. Like, I usually don't complain about animation. In fact, sometimes it doesn't bother me at all. As long as the story is good, I usually don't mind. But the story's not even good enough to keep me out of like focus with the animation. But the story isn't any good either, as all it does is deal with this annoying struggle of never knowing exactly where it's trying to focus. It's just like they don't know what they're doing. They have no idea what the heck they're supposed to be doing with this plot, since there are so many moments where characters will have like these weird dialogue choices. Like, they don't even feel like they're talking people. They feel like they put it through like an AI or something. Like, the dialogue feels so freaking like weird. It's so strange. It doesn't sound like people are talking at all half the time. There's even this one episode where the main character has like a cold, without spoiling why he has a cold or anything like that, and for some reason the temperature they gave him is something that I don't know if that's enough to cause fainting or not, but it didn't seem right. Just, there's so many moments in writing in this show that I couldn't help but get mad, want to pause the episode and shout at the screen because of how bad it is, especially with how they handle the main female lead, the one that found herself growing feelings for the main character after he left. I don't know why, I don't like her. I didn't know why, I just couldn't explain why. She just really got on my nerves. Like, I found myself wanting literally any other character besides her to get together with the main protagonist. She gets on my nerves so freaking much. I can't stand the fact that she seems to be the one that the author of this story is trying to push to the forefront, because she has literally no personality to work with. She lacks anything that makes her an interesting character. She has like nothing for me to work with. And even when they go over her backstory sucks too. Like, there's nothing here for me to think, yes, I want her as the main lead of this show. I want her as the main lead to get into a romantic connection with the protagonist. I can't explain why. I just can't stand her. I can't stand her existence. I wanted her to just leave the picture, and there's just so many other issues with this that I just can't really go into without spoiling. So yeah, I think it's about time we hop to the spoiler section now. Here is a timestamp to when the spoilers end. If you have seen the show, I recommend sticking around. If you haven't, you can just watch the spoilers if you want. You're not really missing much. In fact, I'd say it's better to just listen to the spoilers, because honestly, this show is not worth sitting down and watching. So you can skip this if you want to, but you also don't have to if you don't want to. It doesn't really mind me much. After all, this is a show worth really checking out in my opinion. But Yeah, I'm just gonna count up for 5 and enter the spoiler section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so in terms of spoilers, there are so many things I want to talk about. I literally have a whole list here of positives and negatives I have about the show, and the positives have like 3 things, and the negatives have like 10, just because it shows how much I had problems with this show. So, first thing I want to talk about is the main character. I mentioned how it's all about how the main character tries to distance himself from the main love interest and move on. That's what I was kind of hoping would happen, but no, even though he does distance himself from her a little bit, he's still a massive simp for her. He's still like, oh man, you're so beautiful, you're so amazing, you're so great, no one can compare to your beauty. And I just think, why? Why are you doing this? Why? Please explain to me why you're acting like this. And it's just frustrating because there are so many other characters in this show, and the fact that the main protagonist doesn't really interact with any of them in the same way he does the main love interest kind of baffles me. Since when it comes to his interactions between her and everybody else, he just feels so weird. Like, for example, there are times where he'll be snarky or smart or manipulative and stuff like that. He'll act all these different ways, which always feel completely out of character. It's hard to tell what his personality is because he's constantly shifting. But then, even though most of the time he seems to have some kind of smarts in his brain, all of a sudden, whenever the love interest, I believe her name was like Natsukawa or something, comes into the picture, suddenly he's all like, he suddenly can't form sentences. He struggles to talk with her. He's all blushing, and it's just, I thought this was meant to be a story about a character realizing that the tsundere wasn't gonna be with him, so he decided he would move on, which would be kind of like a comedic thing where she actually did want him and she would try to find ways to win him over, but he doesn't have any interest in her anymore because she rejected him. I thought this is what the premise was going to be about. I thought that would have been a really fun concept to explore and a really cool concept to kind of get into. But no! Instead, we just have him simping for her the entire freaking anime. Never changing. Never once does it feel like he stopped simping. He just continues to do it. He continues to just be all interested in her and literally never takes interest in any other characters because it's just, I don't know why. And the worst part is there are a lot of characters introduced to the point that Natsukawa, again, I think that's her name. If I'm wrong, I don't really care. But there are so many other characters in this anime. Natsukawa basically just kind of gets removed from the picture because there are so many other characters. Like, it baffles me just how many characters there are. Like, I've seen shows with lots of characters in them, but they always try to like balance the characters out to make sure they all feel like they have some role to play. Whether it's a minor role or a major role, they always do that. But half the time, these characters will make one appearance and then literally never pop up again. They'll literally just vanish from sight. And there's even this one character who was in the opening theme that literally never shows up in the anime. They show up in like a text call, and they never actually have any real major lines in them, more than like 1 or 2 lines. And there's no actual like face to go with the voice. It's just text messages. There's literally for basically nothing else. That person literally never shows up in the anime. And I really hate when animes do that, where they'll tease characters, but then we never actually see them. It's kind of one of the few gripes I have with the opening theme for That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. Great anime, but I did find it weird how they would show things from further in the story that we don't see. But moving past that for now, I just really can't stand how all of these characters, literally every single other character that's introduced into this story, feels like a more fit role with the main character. Like Sajo, the main character, it feels like literally any other girl he interacts with would be a better fit for a love interest than the actual love interest who's meant to be the one he's gonna get romantically involved with, that being the main heroine, the one that I cannot stand. And the only good thing that came out of all these new characters is the fact that Natsukawa is just gone from the show for the most part. She pops up here and there for a little bit of dialogue, but the rest of it, she's gone. Out of the picture. Not there. And that is literally the only good thing about the fact that there's so many new characters. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have much else to say on that front. But I do want to go quickly back to what I said before about how Sajo, the main character, just keeps shifting personalities. I don't know why he does that. There are times he'll act all snarky, like he's somehow Ayano Koji, though he's not, because he's not half as cool as Ayano Koji from Classroom of the Elite. And then other times he'll just act really dumb, like he doesn't understand what's going on, he doesn't get an idea of things. It's just so hard to pin down what his personality is because he's constantly shifting who he is, and it feels like the writer didn't know what type of main character he wanted. Because it just doesn't feel like Sajo does anything to the plot. He literally adds nothing or destroys anything. In fact, That's just kind of a gripe I have with this whole show. The fact that nothing really feels like it happens. Despite this whole 12 episode anime happening, it all just kind of felt like filler, to be honest. Like, I can't think of almost any episodes where any type of plot really happens. There's like maybe 3 to 4 episodes where any major plot relevance happens. Nothing else really happens besides that, as pretty much every single episode has some random event happening. Like, oh, Sajo got a cold from protecting Natsukawa from the rain, or oh no, his sister feels bad because he's not interacting with Natsukawa anymore, or this random girl is leaving her boyfriend for some reason, which we'll go into that in a little bit because it's a really confusing story, and there's just all these random plot things that happen that honestly aren't relevant to the overall story, and it just frustrates me so much how this whole season, despite the whole thing happening, felt like I just watched a filler anime. Like the pure definition of a filler anime, where nothing happens, no real plot or anything happens, and there's nothing of substance here. Like, all I could think while I was watching was, dang, do I hate what I'm watching. There are times, though, I will admit, where I got a decent chuckle. Like, a few of the jokes here and there got a decent chuckle, but nothing more than that. And maybe 1 or 2 episodes was fine. Like, there were some episodes that were fine. Like, the sister one I mentioned wasn't the worst, or the ones that included this other character called Ichinose weren't the worst. They were fine. But in the minute Natsukawa and the others came into the picture, things quickly fell apart. And overall, I feel like there were so many moments in this that I just couldn't stand what was happening on screen, especially with such awkward and stiff dialogue. There were so many moments that it was painful to sit through the episodes that, as I mentioned before, had I not been watching this weekly and been watching it all at once, I wouldn't have finished. I wouldn't have finished the show at all. It would have been done. I would have quit before like episode 3 or 4, because the show is just so freaking bad and painful to sit through, since there's just not much there. There's not much to really work with here. The concept sounded cool, because when I thought I heard the premise, my idea of it was the main character fell in love with this girl, he decided to confess to her, and while she might have liked him back, she rejected him, and he was like, okay, I guess that's that then, and move on. And then after that, they might become friends or something like that, nothing more. That's what I thought the premise was going to be about. Like, that's what the concept kind of gave me an idea of what I was looking at. But no, instead we just get this simp who refuses to move on and focus on literally any other girl who might be interested in him, and continues to simp for this one girl who made it clear that at the time she didn't like him, but now all of a sudden she's super defensive about it. And her backstory doesn't really help either. I mentioned before that I didn't really like her backstory, and her backstory really just kind of sucks. Basically, to go over it very briefly, the whole thing is about how she didn't stand out during school, but then once she decides to talk to the main character who was being laughed at in the cafeteria, suddenly everyone interacts with her, and Sajo interacting with her somehow made her more popular, and yeah, that's it. That's literally it. There is nothing else to her whole backstory. Nothing about her really does add anything. There was no like, oh man, I was suffering through all this different pain and torment before, but after he came in and started paying attention to me, I really felt happy about that. It was literally just, I was a loner before, but then after he came into my life, I wasn't a loner anymore, and now I kind of need people to interact with me to feel like I was living a normal high school life or middle school life or whatever. And to that, I just felt like the whole backstory behind Natsukawa's character is a pain. Like, she is by far one of the most frustrating characters in this whole story, as she adds nothing to the overall plot and feels like she just is there purely just to be the love interest. She doesn't add anything to the story. She is such a pain to have to watch. And it's so frustrating how every single character besides her has a personality that I kind of wanted to see explored. There are so many cool and interesting characters that I feel like, had we dove into them even just a little bit more, we could have gotten a good story here. But instead, every single time the writer starts to get to an interesting concept and idea, it's suddenly backtracked because they want to go back to simping over Natsukawa. And I feel like that just ruins so much of the show, and ruins so many parts of it that could have made it such a good anime. And it all doesn't really help with, as I mentioned before, the animation quality being some of the crappiest I have ever seen from any show ever. Like, I've watched stuff that people have claimed are badly animated. For example, Ari Fioretta from Commonplace to World's Strongest. Really enjoy the light novels for that series, but I've also watched the anime. And despite the anime having cheap animation, it's not bad. Honestly, it's a moderately decent amount of animation. Like, it's a decent anime with some decent animation. But this anime has such bad animation that at times I felt like I was literally just watching a blank screen. There was literally this moment in the final episode where the main characters were just standing behind a fireworks show, or not behind, but like in front of a fireworks show. They were basically had their backs to the fireworks, and they stood on those fireworks for like that fireworks shot for like 10 seconds straight. Nothing was happening. Just fireworks going off in the background. That was it. Nothing was happening. They were just standing there awkwardly. No dialogue to kind of add to the scene. It was just like awkward silence. It wasn't like a few seconds of silence to give us a moment to rest into the scene. It was literally just awkward silence. It went on for way too long. It was like if you were watching One Piece and the characters were doing this one scene that normally should have taken like 2 shots, but suddenly was dragged out to a minute. That's the kind of feeling I got when watching that scene. And just overall, this anime just is so annoying with how it presents its characters. But if there's one more thing I want to talk about, moving past everything else for now, it's the first episode of this whole show. The first episode that introduces you to this whole world and its characters, and it is by far one of the worst episodes of the show. I'm amazed I continued this show after episode 1, because basically, the beginning is already confusing enough. Basically, the main character, Sajo, is walking with the main heroine, talking about how he loves her and wants to get together with her, but then suddenly a soccer ball flies by his face, and I'm sure it's explained in the light novel what that means, but in the anime, they don't go into it at all. He just has a soccer ball fly past his face, and then all of a sudden he's just like, okay, I won't follow around and be a creep anymore. Like, I don't see what was going on through his head in that moment. They could have given like a bit of inner dialogue. They could have given us something to work with, but no. They're just like, oh yeah, he gives up now. Only not because he's gonna continue to simp for her throughout the rest of the season and just continue to get on your nerves as he fails to really do anything with his life other than continue to help people while constantly switching personalities along the way. Plus, there's a lot of weird things going back to the animation without talking about everything about the animation, is where they'll bring up dialogue choices that don't make sense, such as the main character talks about how he has to dye his hair, and then in the show they claim he dyed it. They claim that he got his hair color changed, but it's not. It's the same hair color it was like 2 shots ago. They claim the hair color was changed, but there was no difference. And there was also a similar thing where Natsukawa is just walking up to the MC, and she's just like, oh man, your hair's a mess, and she starts patting it down. When I look at it, I just think, really? It looks the exact same as it did after you patted it down, though. It looks the exact same. There was no difference. And it just reminds me that sometimes the budget can be kind of awkward, but I feel like they could have at least changed the hair color. They could have at least done that to make things look a little bit different, but no, apparently that was a bit too much. But yeah, overall, this whole show was just a pain to sit through. There were so many moments that I couldn't stand. Natsukawa as a love interest is by far one of the worst heroines I've seen, because they try to build her up like she's some amazing love interest for the main character to follow, but instead, the only reason the main protagonist has any interest in her is because that's what his character's designed to be. He's designed to be kind of cool when he's not around her, but the minute he's around her, he's a dumb, oblivious simp. And I feel like I've been saying simple on this video, but it's just the best way to describe the main protagonist in this anime. He doesn't try to be anything more than that. He's just constantly just like, oh man, the main love interest is so beautiful, she's so amazing, she's so cool. And he's just constantly getting on my nerves with how little character development and personal growth he has throughout this whole show. Like, he could go through so much different stuff. He could have gone through so many different character development moments, maybe learning about how the way he went about things with Natsukawa were wrong, and that he should probably try to move on and find a new love interest. That's the kind of story I was hoping would happen. A story that could really give you a perspective about sometimes the first love is not always the one you're looking for, and you could probably find some other love. But instead, that's not what we got. Instead, we got this guy who refuses to stop talking about how great the main love interest is, and instead is just trying his hardest to just continue sipping over her, but from a distance. And that's basically the only thing that happens in this show. And that just upsets me so much, because it had so much potential that fell out the window because the writer behind this clearly had no idea what they wanted to do with the story, and it fell apart faster than a lot of things in life for me. There's just I've watched a lot of rom-coms, and this is by far one of the most painful and irritating stories I've ever had to sit through, and I just have to pray that there's not going to be another season, because I could not sit through more of this. And even if there was a second season, I refuse to watch it because it was bad, and the protagonist and everyone else couldn't stand them, and I kind of regret checking out this anime, and I'm amazed I sat through it to the end. But yeah, that's all we have to say. So we're at the conclusion of this video, and one of my final thoughts: it's not good. it's just not good. There's like one or two decent jokes here and there throughout the show, one or two okay episodes, but nothing of real substance, nothing of real unique personality. I've watched a lot of rom-coms, ones I love, ones I hate, but this just goes into a new category of I never want to watch this again, and I want to forget it as soon as possible. I don't want this in my mind anymore, and that's why I give The Dreaming Boy is a Realist a 3 out of 10. Such a bad show. Had a decent moment here and there, but overall was really bad, and I don't want to remember I ever watched this anime. I want to leave this be, and I'm done. I don't want to sit through this again, and yeah, that's all I have to say, so thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I also do anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!